What is up, Liberty lovers? It is Tuesday night. My name is Matt. This is Why Libertarian. Hope everyone is doing well up here in the Northeast where I'm at. We're dealing with snow and then more snow and then some ice and then some more snow. So it's definitely been an interesting couple of days. Before I get rolling here, just always remember, like, comment, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, retweet, put this out there to anyone that can use this information, especially if they are curious about living a life of liberty and freedom. Spent the last couple of days in the Poconos. My youngest had her 4th birthday. Happy birthday to her. And so we went snow tubing. We had some fun as a family out and about. It felt really good to go on a trip where we felt like we didn't necessarily have to sequester ourselves the entire time. We did get a house where we were kind of like set away from everyone, but we did get to take part in a pretty big group activity, which was fantastic to go to, snow tubing with the kids and let them have fun and kind of get out and be a part of nature in conjunction with it. So all of that was really, really fun. The last couple of days and actually the last couple of weeks have given me personally, I think a lot of people, but have given me personally a lot of time to kind of reflect on COVID, on just what has been happening over the last, 8 to 15 months. I mean, like just the bizarro world that we live in now. And the world that we came through, because I think it's just slightly less bizarro now than when we first started this way back in March. I think things kind of hit their zenith in, at least for us in the United States, hit their zenith in, August and September and October. And then I think we started to kind of learn some lessons collectively as a people. And I think that has contributed to the fact that now, like, bizarro world is a little less bizarro, okay? You could also get political conspiracy theorists and talk about the fact that we had, to paraphrase George Carlin, one of those really swell elections that we really like so much. And at the end of the election, all of a sudden, everyone is anti-lockdown now, strangely enough. But we are collectively as a group, I think a lot of us won't truly understand the ramifications of what we've been through for a long time. But I think there are a handful of folks that are visionaries that kind of saw what was happening before it even happened, right? They kind of were able to tell us what was going to happen before the executive orders came down and before the lockdown and before all of this other stuff hit. And, quite frankly, it's something that I need to try and do more of myself. Like, not necessarily to condescend to be a visionary, but someone that really kind of takes stock of, the present environment and also what the future looks like, right? So I've had some time to do some of that. I've had some time to reflect. I've had some time to kind of look at things, both in terms of me personally, as well as just in terms of like the broader politics and culture that's been associated with what we've been through for the last year plus, or almost going on a year here, with COVID. So, one of the first things that I really kind of thought about was health. All right. Health was such a big piece of this that at the beginning it got buried, right? Like, at the beginning, we knew the people that had the worst issues had all of these comorbidities, right? Like, these things that they were fighting before they even got COVID, right? And if left to their own devices, a lot of those folks would have succumbed to those comorbidities probably, in the future. And so health was really kind of something that didn't get focused on at the beginning, but now it's becoming way more apparent that folks that were healthier, okay, again, there's always going to be the bullshit mainstream media. Well, this 35-year-old used to run marathons, and like, look, there's always going to be a situation where, someone dies from the flu that everyone was like, oh my God, that was a healthy person. I can't believe that would have happened, all right? It just happens. When you have 330 million people in a country, when you have billions of people across the planet, something inane and innocuous is going to kill people. It's going to happen. The question is whether or not it happens a lot. But I think really at the heart of it, a lot of folks tried to get healthier, right? I think me at the very beginning of it, I was in denial. I actually kind of went in the opposite direction. I put on weight. I started drinking way more than I normally did. I mean, I joke with people. My wife and I like wine. And wine and beer, and we don't get too highfalutin as far as that stuff goes, but we actually like switched at the beginning of lockdown to box wine, because dude, you could buy like 3/5 of wine in a box, or 4/5 of wine in a box, for like half the price. So that's just kind of the thinking that broke in at the beginning of all this. It was like, all right, well, if we're going to basically hibernate for months on end, we might as well bulk buy the things that help us get through. Well, all of that really kind of took its toll. I started to feel really sluggish. Look, I've had sleeping problems for a while, where I'm just not going to bed at a good time, and then waking up in the morning, I feel like a zombie. All of that kind of hit a head at the beginning of COVID, or a couple of months in. And so that's something that I've been really kind of battling and struggling with. But so I'm trying to take the steps. I'm trying to go to bed at a decent hour. We bought it's not exactly a decentralized way to go, but we bought a mirror. So anyone who knows the mirror that goes on the wall that has kind of like the virtual, aerobics and yoga classes and strength training classes and boxing and kickboxing and stuff like that. We bought that for the family, so that was like a family gift, and a lot of us have been using it actively to get back, physically active. And then, just getting back out into nature. We walked a lot at the beginning, but it just didn't overcome the I guess some of the institutionalized, or some of the kind of more depressive type of behaviors that we adopted at the beginning of lockdown. Something I also thought about was financial health, right? Financial health and financial freedom. I'm someone who owns their own business, which I'm very proud of. And now the problem was that when I started that business, I didn't do the financial health checkup I needed to be able to then make decisions strategically within that business with my business partner that didn't come from a place of fear. True liberty and freedom comes from a place of being able to make decisions for your own life based off of what you want, but not because you feel compelled out of fear. And so my financial well-being very much was something that was holding me back. It caused fear that would compel me to make a really bad decisions financially as well as physically, health wise, and in my relationship with my family. Like, my decisions were very off track because I always had that outside pressure of that financial health issue. And so this is something that we started slightly before COVID, but myself and my wife have really started actively trying to get to the point where we have no debt, where everything we own is all cash, purchased, and there's nothing hanging over our heads, and it's a long process. And so one thing that I actually thought about was like, all right, I'm a big proponent of when politicians talk about, well, what's the solution to student loan debt and things like that? Well, number one is stop being predatory lenders. Like, the federal government should not be in the business of anything, least of all predatorily lending money to college-age kids, under the pretense that they require this high-priced education in order to be successful in life and productive in the country. But the second piece of it is that you should be able to go bankrupt. You should be able to dispose of student loan debt in bankruptcy, because there's then at least a feedback mechanism to the companies that are giving the loans to be like, oh man, we took it on the chin on this one. Maybe we shouldn't be giving $120,000 in loans to a social work major, right? Like, not to say that social work isn't valuable, but in terms of what that person can pay back afterward, just doesn't make any sense. If they can dispose of it in bankruptcy, they can get rid of it. Yes, they have a black mark on their credit report for 8 years or 10 years, but they'll be able to move past it and they'll be able to live in the meantime, as opposed to garnishments and constantly getting called and their parents getting called and harassed and all this other stuff. So I'm a big proponent of bankruptcy and things like that. It wasn't something that fit for me. I couldn't file for bankruptcy. I had a business. If I ever file for bankruptcy in the business that I'm in without giving too much particulars, like, I could lose my license. So I couldn't do that. So there was another alternative, and it was basically restructured. So restructuring debt for individuals, you would think would be very difficult. Companies do it all the time, but for individuals, it's tough. Like, you can't necessarily call up Chase and be like, hey, I owe 20 grand on my credit card. Can I give you, 14? And then we cut up the credit card and call it quits. Chase will tell you to go pound sand. The difference is when you have an attorney that calls on your behalf, and they know what Chase has accepted in the past in terms of debt settlements and things like that. They actually have data and history on that stuff, and they can leverage that expertise and that experience to be able to help you restructure that debt and dispose of it in a way that you're not necessarily going through bankruptcy. And also, the best part about it is, once you go through that payment process and dispose of that restructured debt, it's not a long-lasting black flag on your credit report. Okay, so we actually went through, and I can share this. I'm not going to share my account information, but I can share the screen here for you. This is actually the law firm that we use, Robert S. Getmaid and Associates. They've been absolutely fantastic. I mean, the team over there, dude, they make good money, but they do it. They do an amazing job doing it. And I can say that a lot of the restructuring has resulted in 40, 50, 60% reduction in the overall payment that's associated with that debt. And in a lot of cases, what they're doing is they're negotiating. I was one of those people that always made good money, and I was carrying these debts just year after year after year because I was paying the interest on the principal, but I was never paying down the principal. I couldn't get ahead. I was always behind. So what they did was they would look at the history of these accounts and be like, guys, you've made this principal, the original whatever, $5,000 that you lent out on this card or on this personal loan, you've made this 3 times over. What can we do in order to make it, go away? You get a tax write-off because the federal government gives them a write-off for, for their taxes for restructuring these things. And so we were able to actually work through, and we're still in the process of working through, a lot of our debts that normally I just still would have continued to be paying interest on, and again, making really poor decisions for my life based off of having that crap hanging over my head. And since we got them into this and enrolled the things that we needed to enroll, uh, it has felt like a gigantic weight being lifted off of me. And it makes such a big, big difference. So do not underestimate financial health when it comes to your ability to live a life of freedom and liberty. Okay, debt is debt is enslavement. Okay, any form. I mean, like taxation is theft and extortion. Certain types of debt, actually most types of debt, are enslavement. You live the rest of your life just trying to pay that amount off. Okay, don't get caught with that. Make the decisions, the tough decisions, to get out from under it as soon as possible because it has long, long, long term consequences on your life moving forward. And then the mental health aspect of it, like the physical and the financial, when you fix those, it can help your mental health a lot. Okay. But in addition to that, you still can't just assume that your mental health is going to be fixed by fixing those other two things. You really need to be present with yourself and ask, like, how am I feeling? Why am I feeling that? Right? Like, what's going on? Okay. I have my personal issue is I get very emotional when I'm frustrated or anxious, and I tend to lash out at others, when I don't mean to, right? Like I love the people around me, but when they come to me with a legitimate issue or request or they need help, daddy, like work with me on this. And if I'm in the middle of something, I'm in that headspace where I'm just anxious or I feel like the world's crushing in around me, I can lash out from time to time. You have to be present, like whatever your mental state is, or whatever your propensities are. You need to learn that. Like you need to have some self-presence and some self-actualization, understand how you and why you feel things and where you're coming from. And also what helps you clear your head, okay? What really helps me clear my head is just alone time and silence and reflection, okay? And I would like lie to myself thinking that like if I was sitting there like watching a movie that I always liked, that qualified, and it doesn't qualify, okay? That is just zoning out. That's detaching. That's the opposite, right? The true thing that works for me is being truly like thinking about the issues that I'm going through. Something that really helped me earlier on, and something that my wife and I, when we were dating, used a lot of was something called The Artist's Way. And there's a number of different books of The Artist's Way. One of them works with, I believe it's creativity, and that's the one that we worked through. And it's really well laid out. It's like you read, like a chapter of like 5 pages or whatever. And then there's weekly homework assignments, right? Like you get one homework assignment, self-homework assignment every week to go, do something, and you get to pick it for the most part, right? Or they kind of give you some guidance and then you can make it your own. But something that is consistent throughout the entire process is this idea of this like flow of consciousness journaling in the morning. And that flow of consciousness journaling, like I really need to get back to, because first of all, you have like a moment of clarity when you wake up in the morning that you don't get any other time during the day, especially if like you're rejuvenated or you've been dwelling on something and it came out like while you were sleeping. When you wake up first thing in the morning and you just write for 10 minutes, just flow of consciousness, like just kind of, writing how you feel or what you're thinking or what you're coming up against or any and all of those things just come out on the paper, and you can work through some stuff. Like when I go back and look at those journals from way back when I did have that kind of, free flow of consciousness writing, some really big stuff in my life came out, and it was stuff I never would have said out loud or told to someone, and it came out in me being able to write. And again, not all of this stuff works for everyone, right? But you try these things to try and find these kind of like fixes or help, and it will help you, right? Like you will find an outlet that alleviates a pressure that you've been dealing with for possibly decades. If you can find that, it changes your life dramatically. So that was kind of my realization in terms of health, right? Physical, financial, mental. All right. So let's think of some other things that kind of get past the health guru part of this. One thing is to always think of the direction that you're headed in. All right, this kind of seems really like easy or just like duh. Like of course you should think about the direction you're headed in. But one thing that I've noticed, and I fell into it, and a lot of people around me fell into it during COVID, is a lot of folks just got these blinders on where they kind of like put their head down. They didn't see anything that was happening around them. And the only questions that they asked were, what do I need to do in order to get to the next day? That's it. Just let me get to the next day, get to the next day, get to the next day. And they did that from the standpoint of their family, from their profession, from the standpoint of, the cultural pressure that was put on them in terms of masking, not masking, vaccine, social distancing, which places to go, which places not to go, the election, everything, right? They just kind of put their head down and put blinders on, and they said, all right, what do I need to do in order to just keep trudging forward? All right. I think a lot of people didn't stop to look up and be like, where am I headed? Like, am I making progress with my head down, but I'm going toward a cliff, right? Like, you might think that you're making progress if every single day you keep your head down and you're 1 foot ahead, 1 foot ahead, 1 foot ahead. But if you don't see the cliff, if you don't see the fall in down the road, like, you need to be cognizant of that. I think a lot of people went into survival mode when all of a sudden the media torrent that came down and the political, propaganda that came down with COVID made people deathly afraid. Like everyone was going to die, or all their loved ones were going to die, or they could kill their loved ones through their actions. They put those blinders on. They were just like, okay, I'm in survival mode. Whatever I need to do, just tell me. Just tell me. What do I need to do in order to take that next step tomorrow, right? And the problem was people weren't looking ahead. It was all about today, right? And you could hear it in the propaganda and everything. It's like, oh, well, the hell with the economy. We'll fix that tomorrow. We got to save lives today, right? Like, that was the big thing at the very beginning. Like, we got to save lives today. Like, how dare you prize profit over people? And that really is that survival mindset with those blinders where it's just like, let's get to the next day and hopefully everyone's alive, right? That kind of lack of foresight or the lack of looking out into the future to figure out where are we headed or where am I headed as an individual is a big proponent to freedom and liberty. Like, you have to have that to understand freedom and liberty truly, because if you're just making random decisions, you are free to do that. But at the same time, you can make those random decisions, paint yourself into a corner, right? A la, take out a bunch of debt or something like that. Paint yourself into a corner and you find yourself with no freedom or liberty left, okay? So you always have to remember the direction that you're headed in. Something else that I found out was, so over the last 3.5 years after I started the business, I've very much just kind of been on my own for the most part. Like, I would go home and be with my family and occasionally, but really we run a decentralized business. There's no central office. There's not coffee talk or water cooler gossip or anything like that going on. For the most part, it's been myself and my business partner for 3.5 years with some, random people sprinkled in that kind of came and left. So I felt like, you know what? I'm a lone wolf. I can just go at it my own. I can build this business and work with the partner that's decentralized and away from me, and we can just kind of come together when we need to. But I can do it myself. And that's not true. Like, it's just not true for me. Some people can do that. For me, that's not true. I need a group of people. When COVID hit, the biggest thing that I missed was networking, which is really funny because I was an introvert when I was like in high school. I was not like overly like I was not an extrovert, like not overly so, right? I was nerdy. I played sports and things like that, but I gravitated more socially towards the more kind of like introverted and math science kind of like nerdy group of kids in school. And it wasn't until later on in life that I really became more extroverted. And the one thing that I still crave to this day is just being able to be in a big room of people without any fear, and just being able to walk up to people and meet new people and shake hands and bullshit about business and how things are going, and just that whole ambiance of being able to work the room, right? And just make connections, and like, oh, do you know who, and like, this person, and usher them over. Like, that whole dynamic is, I miss it so much, like so much. It's like at the core of me. So something that I came to the realization was, like, I need a tribe. I need a tribe. Like, I think tribalism is bad. Okay. So, and this brings me to kind of like the next point after this. So tribalism, like blind tribalism, is bad. It's not good. It's like an us versus them kind of thing. But I need a group of like-minded people around me. Like, I need other people to be around me so that I can be social and so that I can talk. And look, it doesn't even need to be people that see the world the same way I see it. But I need people that are open enough so that when we do disagree, we can have an open, substantive discourse and have a good time. And then afterward, like, agree to disagree, like, I'll buy the beer, like, that kind of relationship. I need those things around me. And I kind of thought that I could do away with them because I could just live this life of solitude. I'll get my, my friendly kind of like, socialness at home with my kids and my wife. But that's completely different. That's like family social interaction. You need like peers. You need, I mean, some people just need randos. Like, you just got to interact with some randos out there and like share viewpoints, talk about news and things like that, and do it in a way where you don't feel like you're going to be attacked or demonized or just like shredded or doxxed or canceled. Like, fuck that. Like, I need people that I can talk to. Like, I'm sitting in a bar, I talk to the drunk guy next to me, we don't see eye to eye, we both have good points, and we say, great, fantastic, nice speaking to you, have a good night, right? Like, I need that. Luckily enough, I have found, believe it or not, through Twitter and the Libertarian Party and YAL and a number of other places, I have found a group of people that are just hardcore, awesome freaking people. And we don't see eye to eye on everything, but we see eye to eye on enough where we love getting together. And they are just awesome people. They are not afraid of fucking killing grandma and all this other stuff, okay? They like hanging out. They like talking and talking liberty, talking politics, talking culture, okay? And so that leads me to this next point, and this idea of acceptance, right? And seeking acceptance. As an introvert when I was younger, I veered away from conflict. I didn't want conflict, to the point where when conflict happened, it was usually because I had bubbled over and had had enough, right? Like, the bullies screwed up when they went after me because, like, I would take it and take it and take it and take it. And this is something that is very, very much like, I don't know if it's learned or if it's genetic, but the males in my family have this. We will take a lot of crap, and then like a volcano, we will explode. And when we explode, we are uncontrollable, like absolutely uncontrollable. It's like, it is the weirdest juxtaposition. It is like the control, turn the other cheek, like walk the other way. Like, as much as you could think that someone could put up with something, that is what we can do. And then all of a sudden, bang, the volcano blows up and it's no holds barred. Like, there's no control anymore. Well, when I was young, I avoided conflict as much as I could, right? And every so often that resulted in really bad conflict, which probably reinforced that introverted kind of piece of me, right? But so for the most part, the reason why I felt like I was introverted and avoided conflict was because I wanted acceptance. I wanted people to see me and say like, oh, there's Matt. He's a nice guy. Like, I'd love to chat with him. I would love to talk, or he's always got something funny or smart to say or something like that, right? Like, I always wanted acceptance. But the problem was that I was not discerning in the people that I wanted acceptance from. Like, I wanted universal acceptance. And it's naive. I mean, I was a child. But even to, a few years ago, it was still to the point where I was like, you know what? I need to, like, censor myself, or monitor what I'm saying, or, like, not wear the wrong stuff, not wear my Make Orwell fiction again shirt. Like, I, and COVID just took me in the complete opposite direction, where it was like, you know what? You're going to piss people off anyway. There are people that won't accept you. In fact, there are a lot of people out there that, because you're trying to gain their acceptance so hard, like so much, like you're being needy, they will not accept you. Okay? And so part of it is like, you just have to do you. You're going to piss people off, right? And the group of people that I'm now kind of in touch with here in New Jersey, that are part of my libertarian freedom crew, right? Like, I don't say things to gain their acceptance. I just know that they're going to accept me because I've thought out what I had to say. And they might not agree with me, but there's an acceptance there. But I can't, like, you can't try to actively gain people's acceptance. That's not healthy. It's just not. Like, pandering, like being a whore for acceptance, okay, is not the positive direction to go in, okay? Acceptance is something that you should expect from people for you being you, all right? And if they don't accept you for you being you, then fuck them, okay? Move on. Find a different group of people where you can be who you are, be free, be an individual, okay? And as you're working through these things, they're there and they accept you. And whether they agree with you or not, that's the crew that you want to roll with, all right? But so many people during COVID, it was like this desire to be accepted by the collective, right? Like, there was this purity test where you didn't, social distance hard enough. You didn't wear your mask enough, or the right way, or in the right places, right? You didn't disinfect enough, or wash your hands enough, or you, like, just add, like, everything on top of everything, like all of your behavior. And if you didn't say the right things, right? Like, even if you did all those things, but you were like, you know what? I'm doing all this stuff, but I don't really agree with it, or I don't think it's being effective. They would, like, it's a witch, burn them. Like, but a lot of people just kowtowed to the grander group to be like, please just accept me. I'm doing things the way I'm supposed to be doing it. And that's calculated. Like, that's calculated on the part of the authoritarians that would push you in that direction, that would want the group to self-police. I mean, just think, we had situations where people were reporting their neighbors as if this was Nazi Germany, reporting their neighbors for having too many people over, okay? And in some cases, it wasn't like a rager, right? It wasn't 50 people with bodies hanging out the windows. It was like 2 extra people. And you had neighbors calling the police on their neighbors because there was 2 extra people in the house, okay? Because that drive for purity and acceptance of the part of the broader whole pushed people in that direction, or compelled them to go in that direction, and literally blow the whistle on their friends and their loved ones and their family. Acceptance is it's something that you should not strive for, but you should appreciate. All right, is probably a better way of saying it. Acceptance is not something that you should just, like, go all out to get. All right, it is something that you should appreciate when it's there. When you're able to be you and you're accepted for it, you should appreciate that. But you shouldn't necessarily, like, wake up in the morning and be like, all right, what do I have to do today in order to be accepted by the whole, or be accepted by this group of people? All right, that is an unhealthy way to live. All right, before I get into my second half here, I have a little bit of a trailer. Some of you have seen this before. But this is something that I'm working on. Again, something that has come out of COVID that I think is going to be a gigantic positive in my life, and then hopefully the lives of the people that end up watching along and following on this journey. Oh, maybe we're not playing right now. Hold on. There are so many reasons to decentralize, whether it's lack of control over your own data, platforms where you are the product and get paid little to no money, or censorship and government oversight into your personal communications. That's why I'm taking a journey to decentralize my social media as well as my life. Make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and check out the Decentralize Everything playlist on this channel. Whether you're curious or looking to decentralize too, I would love your company as I make a move to break free, take control, and decentralize everything. So yeah, that's a journey that I am going on, and hopefully folks will follow me on as I look to decentralize not just my social media or my digital presence, but pretty much everything that I can. And someone I was talking to earlier today, the goal isn't necessarily to detach from society. That's not it at all. Like, it's not to go live out in the middle of the woods and never be with anyone ever again. It is literally to try and actively separate myself, and help others do too, separate themselves from a system that is overly authoritarian, overly regulated, overly intrusive, and ultimately, basically steals liberty and freedom from people. And the people that supposedly it's supposed to protect the liberty and freedom of, but it's really not. It's not that at all. It's not that at all. So anyway, moving forward. So let's see. My next take home from COVID, and this is going to be an interesting one. So take this for what it is from someone who is not like an ultra staunch believer. Okay, I grew up as a Baptist when I was raised as a kid, and I gravitated away from that, and now I'm not like an organized religion person anymore. Okay, so take that for what it is. But here's one thing that I did take away from COVID, and that's and it's that idolatry is a sin. Okay, if you're not a religious person, take the sin word out of there and add, whatever you want into there. Like, idolatry is a fool's errand, right? Or idolatry is unhealthy. Like, whatever you want to put in there. Idolatry, like idolizing symbols and more specifically people, okay? And in this case, with COVID, politicians and doctors, okay, who are just politicians with an MD, by the way, in this case, idolatry is something that, regardless of if it's Trump or Fauci or Gavin Newsom or Andrew Cuomo or Phil Murphy or Nancy Pelosi, or even pick the pop culture and the cultural people that were telling you to isolate and mask and all this other stuff and virtue signaling, right? Like, idolizing those people is just, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing at all, especially when it comes to politicians, right? Like, politicians are supposed to be those people that represent us, and they should be, we should come down on them more than we should applaud them, right? Like, we should be more critical of them. Like, 99% of the time, we should be like, why'd you do that? You shouldn't have done that. Like, how did you do that? Like, 99% of the time, we should be questioning what they're doing. 1% of the time, we could be like, you know what, you did a good job. Like, little golf clap, okay? But we should not be idolizing these people. It doesn't matter who it is, right? As someone who's like an ANCAP libertarian, someone like Thomas Massie or Justin Amash or Rand Paul, like, I even find fault in them, in their voting record and what they say and how they go about doing their business. And so these people should not be untouchables. And we make them that way, or we at least allow them to sell us on the illusion that they are. They're not untouchables. If anything, they are not supposed to be a ruling aristocracy. Okay. Now, this is something where, like, if I had Adam Kokesh on, not to put words in his mouth, but I'm sure we would have a conversation back and forth, and he would raise the idea that, That's exactly what the Constitution wanted, right? Like that's the exaction. That's centralizing power. That's exactly what the logical conclusion is, which I can't argue with him on that point. Like I think that's true, right? Like whenever you implement a system where you centralize power and authority in one person's hands or a dozen or 535 people's hands, it ends up centralizing power and creates these people that have to be pandered to, as opposed to people that were supposed to represent us and should have been fearful of losing their job every second of every day, right? We should be able to fire them at a moment's notice for not looking, for basically intruding on our liberty and freedom. And it's the exact opposite of that. I put out a tweet last week, and I think it was Shane Hazel's radical. I think it was number 89, maybe. It was he did a twofer in terms of the anti-federalist papers that he went over. I forget if it was like 23 and 24, 27 and 28. But so the one paper he was reading from essentially said, you've taken the English rule that we came from and just essentially repackaged it and gave it new names. And so he said, instead of president and senators and House of Representatives, we should just call them what they are. And they are the English alternatives that we were supposedly trying to distance ourselves from, right? It was King and Lords and House of Commons. So from here on out, I'm not going to say, it's not President Biden, okay? It's King Biden. It's King Biden. It was King Trump. Before him, it was King Obama, okay? They are freaking kings because the Federalists effectively just gave us the same bag of shit that we had in England, and they just repackaged it, okay? They drew some stuff on the outside of it and changed the name. That's all they did. And that's exactly what we have right now. But so the idolatry of the people that are in those positions is a sin. You should not be idolizing people that have centralized power and control and then basically dictate to you what your life is supposed to look like. Okay? And again, it doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Okay? The problem that we have to stop falling into is, oh, well, it's my idol, right? Like, it's on my side. This is my idol. So that's okay. Your idol's bad. No, all idols are bad, right? Especially when it comes to DC and centralized power in the federal government. All right, idolatry is a bad thing. If you are a constitutional, what you consider yourself a religious constitutional conservative, okay, you should not be idolizing any politicians. All right, when someone goes up there and says something like, "There shouldn't be Ted Cruz fanboys," there just shouldn't. Okay, put in whatever politician you want. You shouldn't be fawning at these people. These people work for you. Okay, you should treat them like crap. Is what you should do. They just want the opposite. They want to treat you like crap and make you think that you should fawn over them. It's wrong. All right? Here's the other thing. America succeeds despite its government, not because of it. America succeeds because of its people, because of you and me and other people that act as individuals, free individuals, that in bettering our lives, we better the lives of people around us. Okay? That's how America succeeds. We succeed despite the fact that the Constitution is basically lipstick on a pig. Okay? We succeed despite the fact that we live in a surveillance state unlike the world has ever seen at any point in time in history. Okay? We succeed despite the fact that all of these politicians would have you believe that they have your best interests in mind when truthfully they are bought and paid for sock puppets. Okay? They put so many barriers in our way. COVID is the perfect freaking example. They put so many barriers in our way and we succeed despite them. Despite them, not because of them. At no point in this country's history can I look back and say, it really looks like the U.S. government did a fantastic job of helping us be successful. Every single time I look back and I see like great accomplishments in American history, it's not because of government. Government's typically working against the step forward, whether it's technologically or culturally or racially or whatever. Like, attach whatever accomplishment you want to in our history's past, like in our country's past. It's always the government working against the good that comes of it. It's never for, okay? Here's the other thing. Culture always precedes the laws. It always does. It did when it came to desegregation. It did when it came to, the anti-war movements of Vietnam and Korea. It did when it came to marijuana decriminalization. It's doing it now when it comes to, like, decriminalizing sex work. Like, everything. You want to look at anything that the government does to stop you from being able to exercise your freedom and your liberty, okay? And culture always front runs those things. It fights back against the things that take away your freedom and liberty, and it also front runs the things that most people would point to say, see, government did something good. They helped us. All you have to do is turn to them and say, that would have happened anyway. And in fact, they probably screwed stuff up, because if you had just let it go, it would have gone way better. But government decided to put itself in the way of it, and to monitor it, and to control it, and slow it down, and make sure that it didn't go too far, too fast. In most of those cases, the government, even after they've caught on to the fact that we as a people want something, they always put the pieces in place that still manage to screw it up. Like, either screw it up or completely delay it, so that we could have had that advancement way earlier. But they decided, nope, we have to bless it. Right? Bow down before us. We'll tell you when you can have these things. Okay? It happens with everything, right? The infringements and the overstep and the overreach into our freedom and liberty, as well as the good things that have happened in terms of being able to advance the country forward. Every single time, we do it first. I had a conversation earlier today, and the phrase, salvation lies within, came up. And it couldn't be truer. You don't need government. You don't need any government. Salvation lies within. It doesn't lie behind the badge of a police officer, and this is coming from a son of a retired police officer. Salvation does not lie behind the badge of a police officer. It does not lie behind the seal of a governor or a senator or a House of Representatives member or the king. Sorry, I went back on my promise. It doesn't lie behind the seal of a lord or a member of the House of Commons or the king of the United States of America. It lies inside of you. The change that can happen, it's you. Don't wait for them. They're always late and they always fuck it up. It's you. That's what matters. It's me. It's everyone out there that would see something change. You don't need to wait for them. You don't need an elected official to get that stuff moving in the right direction or to mandate something that's good for people. You don't. Usually culture does that for them, and it front runs them. It's always early, and it's always better. The only way to truly change things in any government, you're going to love this one. The only way to truly change things in any government is through massive, peaceful, civil disobedience. I'm going to say that again. The only way to truly change things in any government is through massive, peaceful, civil disobedience. And it applies to anything. We have seen it happen time and time and time again. We do not advance as a society or a culture. We do not regain freedom and liberty from these tyrants by pandering to them. We don't, or by asking for it back, or by running another figurehead who fights against them and wins. It doesn't happen. What happens is when the collective people, who there are way more of us than them, and we have way more power, and we have way more control than we know, when we decide to say, screw you, We're going to do what we want. They can't stop us. The key is getting enough support, getting enough collective action to be able to do it. But time and time again, it is not some prescribed government path or workflow or election. It's not. It's people banding together to do it regardless of what the government says, because they are able to. They're allowed because it's their natural rights. The fact that they exist allows them to do it. If you try and stop them, they're going to do it anyway. Again, look at anything that's been regulated by government in the past and eventually repealed. The repeal follows massive, peaceful civil disobedience every single time. All right, here are some takeaways that are kind of, I guess, my prescription or my hopeful prescription that's come from this introspection. We need to do everything possible to cut the federal and state governments out of how we choose to live our lives. That's it. Decentralize, step away, stop funding the mafia that runs this country and runs most of our states, if not all of them. All right? Do everything that we can to get them out of our lives. And I'm not talking about laws. We have to run pro-freedom candidates. Again, don't idolize them. Hold their feet to the fire. If they say, I am pro-freedom and liberty, except, you know what you tell them? Don't even finish your sentence. You're not pro-freedom and liberty. If you're pro-freedom and liberty except for something, you're not pro-freedom and liberty. You don't get it. You don't understand. You still think that you can wield the ring of power better than other people, that you can make the decisions that's best for other people, for them. There's no except. Freedom, liberty. That's it. Create culture and invite folks to take part in it and show them how amazing freedom and liberty are. This is a really important piece here. It's kind of why my crew, I call it my crew, but there's no we, there's no my, it's just the crew that I'm rolling with right now here in Jersey. It's why, the Libertarian Book Club is happening. We're going to be doing another one. We're reading the New Right by Michael Malice. Wow, crap! I have to look at the date that we have set up. It's in the 20s here this month. I believe it is the 26th, Friday the 26th at night. We will be doing, again, a live simulcast. It'll be on Blue Star Union, on their YouTube channel and their Twitter as well, or Periscope, as well as on Why Libertarian. We're doing the New Right. That's why we're doing the Libertarian Book Club. Right now we're trying to put together a libertarian poker game, online, streamed. We want to be able to sit there and talk freedom and liberty and play some poker, many of us badly. But invite people in to cultural, a look culturally into what it is to be truly free and to have liberty. Because a lot of folks, they're not going to just assume the grass is greener. You have to show them. You have to invite them in. So we have to do things to create these cultural pictures or even these experiences that people can take a part of, where they can see freedom and liberty acting as it does and how amazing it is. Decentralize. Decentralize every damn thing. Everything. Food, money, communication, social media, entertainment, okay? Everything. Commerce. Decentralize it all. You have to starve the beast. Stop feeding them. That's what they live off of. They live off the tax money. They live off of us bowing down because they want everyone to think that we need them to do what we have to do every day to keep our lives going. They want to think that we need them, right? It is Chancellor Sutler, in V for Vendetta. Remind them why they need us. We don't need them. We don't. We never have. That's one point that Shane Hazel tries to make day after day, week after week on Radical. We don't need them. We never did. We were good before they decided to reinstitute exactly what we had over in jolly old England. We don't need them. Decentralize everything. And the last one, rebel against tyranny. Do not stand for it. And again, it doesn't matter who it is, a public official, a police officer. I'm saying peacefully. Do not stand for it. Don't let it happen and sit there and go, oh, sucks for him. No. Do not stand for it. Recognize it. Know your rights. When there's an illegal search and seizure, when someone is being basically tormented by authority figures or politicians or anyone, call them the fuck out. Do not stand for it. Make people accountable for when they basically breach your liberty and freedom. Let them know. Maybe they don't even know. Maybe they have no clue. Maybe they're like, oh, well, this is the way it's always been. Well, it shouldn't have been that way. But they don't know until you tell them. When your liberty and freedom are encroached upon, let them know for yourself. I'm not saying like this isn't a, you must be anti-racist bullshit moment. Okay? It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when it happens to you, call out who's doing it. If it is happening to someone else, don't feel afraid to. I'm not saying you have to, but don't feel afraid to. Point it out. That's the whole thing with like videotaping police interactions and stuff like that. People used to be afraid to do that. And police officers used to hate to have it happen so much so that they would take cell phones, they would infringe on people's property rights, arrest people for doing things that they are completely able to do. Do not feel like you have to bite your tongue. When your freedom and your liberty is encroached upon by tyrants, you let them know. And you say you are not allowed to do this. It's not until we collectively start to do that we were going to let enough people understand how rampant this shit is. Rebel against tyrants. Those are my take-homes from COVID. I'm going to continue to sit back and kind of like rethink my experience and try and figure out if there's any more that I've missed. If you think I've missed some, or if there are some that you yourselves have come up with when you've looked back how COVID has transpired and what it's done to you, or how you chose to react, I would love to hear those. So drop them in the comments. Any kind of feedback or questions. Maybe something I said didn't sit right, or maybe it did and it rang true. Let me know. I would love to hear it. I'm Matt. This is Why Libertarian. We're here every single Tuesday night at 5 p.m. Next week, I got a pretty, hopefully, not confirmed, but I got a pretty awesome guest coming up next week. Talking more decentralization, some more tech for you to be able to take part in that is not subject to a central authority figure that could censor you or kick you off or mute you or cancel you or anything like that. So hopefully that comes through. Regardless, we're going to have a fantastic show next week, 5 o'clock on Tuesday, as usual, 5 Eastern. Thank you all. I appreciate it, and have a really good night.